We are here with Gerry McGovern. Gerry, thank you very much for joining us today. And I wanted to start with a question that goes like this. Why is it so hard for people to sponsor user experience research?
I think Tomer, because people are used to getting things, projects or websites or physical things that they pay for, and research is more, inferior, or it's before you start actually doing something. People want to say, "Oh, I want to actually do something. Show me something," and research is less visible, and because you could immediately just start building the site or coding or doing, or doing that thing, whereas research is a real step back from activity, and people find that difficult, and they don't see that clear physical or something that results from the process.
And what do you answer to people, to UX people, people who do research, who complain about their stakeholders, executives, marketeers, product managers, software engineers, that they are not mature enough to understand their awesome work?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the modern world, or in any sort of world, that's a difficult sell, and people just don't. I mean, that's how you antagonize people, and I suppose a lot of as well. What we're finding is this the world of where people sat in their own disciplines, and that's dissipating much more, and the sense of we see all these disciplines, user experience or user research or information architecture. All these people are content or the programmers, and they're all trying to, in a way, justify their own existences and say their discipline is the most important, or that things like content strategy or UX strategy or stuff like that. So there's a kind of a tribal nature that we humans play at an awful lot, and that's part of the problem. And if you wanna reach out, it's better not to reach out with a club and batter somebody over the head and say we're so great. You better listen to us. I think sometimes we need to research our marketing people, our CEOs, our senior management. It needs to be the first port of call to really understand the people that we work with first and foremost before we even understand the customer.
Yeah, I noticed that we are very good at empathizing with our users, but not with our
it's a classic
coworkers.
Problem. Yeah, I think empathy is a two-way street. You mean you gotta have empathy. You gotta try and understand the pressure that the marketer is under, the worldview of the developer. Because if you don't come to it from their worldview, it's much more difficult to bring them along. And today it's much more about bringing people along than forcing them down a path. And particularly with research, which is a more difficult thing to sell. You really have to build champions within your organization that actually, can begin to see and feel the value and champion the value. And you won't do that by treating them like idiots.
And what if, sometimes we do need to work with people who are very difficult, who no matter what you say, no matter what you do, they will always think about user experience research as something, very cute, very nice, but, they have their own intuition. And you do everything right, but still, there's nothing you can do. It seems there's nothing you can do to work with them.
Yeah, well, there are people who are like that. But most people, if you can get yourself out of the scenario, the conversation, and actually say, let me show you this. Even a lot of the most powerful things I've found is the scenario where if we're testing websites or observing behavior in websites, and we might do a minute video or 2 minutes maximum, and so it would start off. First 20 seconds would be, well, here's person A, and they get stopped at this point in the process, in the fifth step or the fourth step or whatever step, and then you just see them stop and fail, and then you just flip to person B, and they reach that same point and they fail, and then you show person C. So 3 20-minute segments, bring them together, and you just say, watch this, right? And then you just say, Now, these are not exceptions. These reflect 40% of our customers, and they've seen 3 real people. And actually, what we find with remote testing, they don't need to actually see the people. The cursor becomes the person and how it's behaved, and obviously a little bit of audio. But if you can, really get people, most people have empathy. I mean, only about 5% of humans are psychopaths. so
that much.
So 95%, are pretty okay. They respond to empathetic triggers. So we have to find those triggers.
Okay.
People. I often say, it's like if you were running a restaurant and it's raining and somebody comes in, they almost slip on your mat, and it might be very busy or stuff like that. But you get a bit worried about that, and but you might forget for that person. But if 10 minutes later somebody else comes in and they almost slip on your mat, you're going to do something. You're going to put newspaper down. You're going to mop, even if it's purely for keeping customers. But if you see somebody slip, you'll respond to that. And I think our job as researchers is to bring the experience, bring the empathy, create these empathetic moments that people can respond to, because most people do. So rather than us saying, "Let me tell you about what your customers are thinking," just sit here and let me show you this. Let me bring you into the observational process.
Right.
They don't have a full day, but if you can do those little snippets of videos, I found they're extremely powerful ways of driving.
It reminds me of an interview I did with a guy called Chris St. Hilaire. He's from Los Angeles. He's a negotiation expert, and he did a lot of research about negotiation and what people respond very badly to and very positively to. So he said one of the top things that people don't like to hear, and you're blocking them, is when you say, "Let me tell you how it is."
Yeah.
So
show don't tell.
Yeah.
Because there's such a great need for that in so many. If you go back to businesses 20, 30, 40 years ago, so many people connected with their customers, whether they were farmers or shopkeepers or you didn't need to do user research in many ways, because you were living with the customers, you were around them, you were dealing with them. But in the world of software development or programming or websites or writing content, it's all, a lot of time it's that the genius in the attic type of scenario where you really get locked away from the experience of people actually using what you're creating. So rarely do many people see the thing that they create actually being used.
Do you have any question for me?
Well, what's of all these interviews that you've been doing over the last 12 months, what sort of trends or what have you learned most? What's the single most important thing that you would take away from all?
I think you touched it. One of the things I keep hearing from people is that they do, they may not use these words, but they do stakeholder research to really understand that what will make that piece of research useful for people. I heard that from many people.
Right.
Many people do that. Many people treat that as a research project as it is with a regular user research project. I think this is something that definitely repeated in these interviews.
And what would you do in your job to get people engaged? What would be what would be your strategy?
So first of all, I ask myself this question almost every day, because getting buying for research is a moving target. I can have the most perfect relationship with someone who's a stakeholder for research, and they buy into research and everything is cool, and then one day it's I don't know, something flips, and I'm not even aware of that. So it's always changing, and you always need to even monitor. It's very hard to quantify, but you need to monitor your buy-in level. Do they refer to research in meetings? Do they do they ask you to come to meetings? I mean,
Right.
I'm not, I'm not managing I'm not taking notes on that, but if they do, if they ask me what I think, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's probably a sign that I'm doing something wrong. So what I try to do is involve them in every stage of research. It feels to them as almost I'm throwing everything on them, but I'm there to help. So, and this is something I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to answer it myself. So there's always a tension between what people ask you to do, ask me to do as a researcher, questions they ask me to answer with research, and questions I think they should ask me to answer with research.
Right.
And so I stopped thinking of that as a tension. I mean, they have their questions. This is what they want to answer. I answered their questions with research. If I want, if I have other opinions about what they should ask, I add 10 more minutes to a study and ask my questions. Nobody ever told me not to do that.
Right.
The opposite happened, that they were more interested in the last 10 minutes than in the 50 that were there earlier. So I'm mostly being asked to run usability studies, usability tests, and I always add to that a more exploratory aspect. So we talk about what people need and what people do, what is painful for them when they use a product, what are their delights, and things like that. Or I just ask them to, without any task, I just ask them, show me how you use this. Imagine we're at work, home, whatever. Just show me.
Do you
People
find
really like that?
the scenarios where find coming up where you might have a conversation with somebody, a customer, whatever, somebody using the website, using the search, and they describe how they go about doing some sort of activity, and then a couple of minutes later you actually ask them to do that activity, and that the difference between what they tell you.
Yes. So that's why I don't ask them to tell me. I ask them to show me.
To show you. Yeah.
Even if it's an open task, it's not even a task. I just let them use the product.
But I think that can be sometimes powerful, even to show that it's not fair sometimes, but to show your internal stakeholders how important it is to have evidence of behavior rather than opinion.
I think I see a lot of that in satisfaction. You have someone completely failing a task.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then they
Why do you take the website?
Extremely satisfied. And stakeholders don't get that.
Yeah.
People they don't understand that. How can they not be aware of what's going on? And I'm explaining that it's not. They're perfectly aware. They know that they failed. They couldn't complete the task. They know that. It's just a bias because we're here. We're looking at them. We're very nice to them. They don't want to be rude.
Yeah.
So they say they're extremely. I mean, take it as they say it. They said it, but it's not. I mean, it's just something that we ask. Maybe we should stop asking and find something else.
Yeah, or well, I think to prove that the need for evidence, not just evidence of it's not just the evidence based in the management model, but the evidence based on the customer behavior. As I said this morning, the worst way to design a website is to have 5 smart people in a room drinking lattes, and the next worst way is to 15 customers in a room drinking lattes.
I agree. I completely agree. Yeah, it's interesting. All right.
Okay. Good.
I think that was really good.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Absolutely. Same here.
And good luck with all your endeavors.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Okay.